Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest IAB webinar in our ongoing series, IAB Revolve webinars. This is Laura from the IAB. Delighted to have you all with us today. If at any point during today's session that you have any questions, then please just raise your hand. Latest IAB webinar and we will answer them immediately. I'm going to be throwing us over now to our co-presenters today. We have Phil Townend, Chief Revenue Officer from Unruly, and Sam Ho, Insight and Solutions Manager for APAC for Unruly. So over to you both.
Laura, and thanks to the IAB for giving us this slot. Hope everyone's well. I don't know who's on the call, but I'm hoping there are some familiar and friendly faces back there on the webcast. So, as you may know, Unruly, I think, invests heavily in research and insights. It's one of our biggest USPs. And if ever there's a topic in the market that is of interest, we try and use audience data and surveys and stuff like that to just understand really what's happening. So, of course, with COVID, it's the biggest topic of today. So we did exactly that. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to walk you through today is just a brief introduction to the study methodology. The study looks at media and consumption habits. So what is happening, what are people doing during lockdown and social distancing? Which leads on to what home-based activities and purchase behavior are they, what are they spending their money on, what are they doing, what are they thinking about advertising, should advertisers still be advertising, should advertisers stop advertising, and what kind of messages are resonating with consumers during this period of heightened sensitivity, and then a summary of those findings. So we'll get straight in. If we can go to the next slide, yep. So we ran this study across 11 global markets, US, Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, Japan, and then these 5 markets in Southeast Asia here. So Vietnam is the only market in Southeast Asia that's not covered at the moment. If anybody wants to see any of the other cuts or wants information on Australia or Japan, if you've got regional roles, then you can reach out to us after this and we can talk you through it. A lot of the data is the same, some of it's different as you'd expect. Total sample size across these 5 Southeast Asia markets, 2,158 people. The period of the survey was March to May 2020. So, as we get knee deep into social distancing and lockdown, and as I said, how people are spending their time, how people are spending their money, and how people feel about advertising. Next slide, please. So Sam is going to walk you through some of these findings.
Cool. Afternoon, guys. I hope you all are well. So I'm going to talk a bit about the media consumption habits as well as online consumption habits in terms of device as well. So moving on to the next slide. As a consequences of spending more time at home, we saw that a majority of Southeast Asians have indicated an increase in their usage of connected device, particularly on their mobile phones. So all except Singaporeans saw more than about 80% of respondents indicating more time spent on their mobile phones. And the subdued increment in Singapore is really likely due to the high mobile usage and penetration rate to begin with. But the pandemic really just made the Singaporeans more dependent on their device, particularly on their smartphones. And we also observed that almost half of Southeast Asia are also spending more time online with their laptops as well as connected TV. So the biggest increase in time spent on laptop and CTVs were observed in Indonesia, Malaysia, as well as Philippines. So we also saw that Indonesians are turning towards gaming consoles to pass time, with 54% of consumers reporting an increase in time spent on their consoles.
So as Sam alluded to there, we'd expect mobile usage across the region to increase, as a primary device. But the fact that laptops, connected TV, and games consoles saw big increases, I think is quite interesting. And we cut this data by demographic to go a bit deeper into this. Next slide, please.
So as Phil mentioned, we broke down the top used connected device by age group, and we saw an increase in time spent on mobile phone across all age groups in all countries, with Indonesia leading the charge on increase in mobile usage, while Thais above 55 years old are lagging slightly in terms of mobile phone usage pickup when compared to before the outbreak itself. It's also interesting to note that increase in laptop usage is driven mainly by a different age group across the 5 different countries. For example, we saw the increase in laptop usage was mainly driven by those who are 18 to 24 years old in Singapore, but those between 45 to 54 are the ones that are connected to the laptop the most in Malaysia and Indonesia. If we move on to the next slide.
So I think, there's...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
Sorry, Sam, I was going to say, I think, that generally there's a perception that, it's older demographics that will be using their laptops, but, we saw increases in usage of laptops across kind of lots of demographics. So I think what that means from an advertising perspective, sorry about the screaming in the background, what that means from an advertising perspective is that, we've got mobile advertising is important, but also desktop is also going to be important. I'm just going to mute while I just go and get rid of this screaming. Sam, take it away.
Sure. So, surprise here, as we observed that the increase in time spent on CTV and gaming consoles are actually driven by older age groups of 45 years old and above. So those who are 45 years old and above in Malaysia and Philippines are actually spending more time consuming content via their connected TV when compared to before the outbreak. While the increase in CTV usage was mainly driven by those who are 35 to 55 years old in Singapore. And for gaming console, the usage is mainly driven by the younger audience between 18 to 24 years old in most countries. But it's very interesting that we note that the older age group of 55 years old and above in Thailand are also picking up gaming controllers in the past a couple of weeks to really just pass time during the outbreak. Next slide.
And I think one of the key things to say around the games console increases is we know that certain behaviours and consumption habits have been accelerated by coronavirus because of self-isolation and stuff like that. So, we'll have a look in a bit at expenditure, household expenditure. There's some habits that have been accelerated there. But one of the big habits that we've perceived as, changing across Southeast Asia is because of the lack of competitive sport or any kind of sporting action. Our partner Ampverse, who are the gaming talent agency that we work with across the region, we're basically seeing the use of gaming and the mainstreaming of esports and gaming basically accelerate by about 3 years as a result of coronavirus and what's happened as people seek to kind of find more information, entertain themselves, and get that competitive fix. So there's some really interesting phenomenon happening right now that is unusual.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just the acceleration of gaming. So we also saw really the pandemic accelerated the existing media usage trends and pushing digital video consumption to a new high. And time spent on consuming online videos saw the highest incrementals across all countries, with the exception of Philippines, in which online video was a close second at 76%, following time spent on social media instead. Social media also saw a sharp increase across the 5 countries in Southeast Asia, especially for countries that are really big on social media, such as Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. So those who are spending a good proportion of time on their TV on demand and messaging as well. We also saw evidence that markets which are culturally more cohesive and collective, such as Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, are exhibiting higher pickup in terms of communication apps, such as video calling and messaging, as they are searching for new ways to connect. So in Indonesia, which is really the second most collective and cohesive nation in the world from a cultural leaning standpoint, video call was actually preferred over text messaging, as consumers now have to rely on tech to see each other face to face due to the whole social distancing measures being implemented by the government.
So as Sam mentioned, we can kind of almost analyse this with a cultural lens, and in those markets that are quite collectivist, where it's all about family and FaceTime and meal times are all about where those rituals exist, messaging, like text messaging, is being replaced more by video calling. And I think Sam's going to look at this by demographic in a minute, which is even more interesting.
Mm-hmm. So we saw that consumption is not the same across age group, and the type of media in Southeast Asia people are consuming are hinting at generation gaps here. So for example, if you look at time spent on online video, it's mainly driven by 18 to 34 years old across Southeast Asia. But we also note that those who are 45 years old and above in Thailand are also actively spending more time watching online videos. And time spent on TV on demand are mostly driven by people who are 25 to 34 years old in Southeast Asia, with the exception of Singaporeans, where 50% of those who are 35 to 44 years old are spending more time on content that are on TV on demand platforms.
Yeah, please.
Right. When it comes to the usage of communication apps across Southeast Asia, we saw incremental usage across messaging, video calling, and social media platforms across all ages, with Indonesians who are 45 years old and above driving the usage across all three platforms. And those who are in the older age group of 45 years old and above in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, they're actually spending more time messaging their loved ones after being cooped up at home, while the 25 to 34 years old are the ones driving the incremental messaging for Philippines and Thailand. For the Indonesians who are 45, yep.
Sorry, Sam, go, please.
For the Indonesians who are 45 years old and above, they are leading the charge for increased usage of video calling apps as they turn to video conferencing to stay in touch with their loved ones. While we saw that for social media, it's really a mixed bag between those 45 to 54 years old in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, observing about 80 to 90% increase in time spent on social media platforms, while it's the younger audiences between 18 to 34 years old driving increase in Philippines and Singapore.
This is quite interesting to see, you know, Indonesia, the older demographics in Indonesia really embracing messaging, video calling, and social particularly, as they seek to replace that kind of like that one-on-one time with their friends and family with other forms of being able to communicate with them. Next slide, please.
So in the next couple of slides, we are going to explore a bit of trends in terms of home-based activities and the consumer's purchase behavior in Southeast Asia. So I recently read a study by YouGov, which is conducted in March this year, which suggested that over 50% of consumers in Southeast Asia are actively avoiding crowded places and choosing to stay at home to protect themselves and their loved ones from infections. So this has really resulted in an explosion in home-based activities such as cooking and looking after children, as you know, the F&B outlets and the schools are really operating at a limited capacity across Southeast Asia during this period of time. And for Philippines and Indonesia, we are seeing more time spent on exercising, while those in Philippines and Malaysia are also using the downtime at home to start on some home improvement projects. So really, if you are a home DIY brand or have clients in this sector, now may be a really good opportunity to come out, remind your customers that you're still here, and maybe run some online deals to support these DIY projects. And of course, for online courses, we also saw strong pickup among the young Indonesians and Thais between 18 to 24 years old. So one of the hypotheses we have is that young university or college students are now turning to home-based learning to continue their education as their institutions are now closed. So it's very interesting that we also see that Indonesians are now spending more time reading their books right now.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, cooking is probably, I think, you know, more time spent cooking, as Sam said, as a result of F&B outlets closing and not being able to go to restaurants. Looking at time spent looking after children is lowest in Singapore. I mean, we could speculate that that's probably because there's more help, I think, in Singapore. But, you know, it's fascinating to see. And, you know, from an advertising perspective, you know, if there's agencies on this call or, you know, clients or, you know, we should be going to our clients and saying to them, look, you know, if you are a brand that's anything to do with food or beverage or exercise or home improvement or online classes and development, you know, all of these sectors are hugely on the increase. And so there's a huge opportunity to get this captive audience whilst this lockdown is happening, and make sure that when we come out of this, either through it or when we come out of it, your brand is the one that's top of mind. Next slide, please.
Just to build on the thought that, how the pandemic is really accelerating a lot of trends, we see that the quarantine measures further push consumers in Southeast Asia into digital activities that were previously new to them. For example, online commerce, such as purchasing groceries online. So when we observe how online consumption of everything is up, when we ask the respondents how much more money are they spending on the following list of categories and items, we saw that particularly for home entertainment in Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, where there's really a large increment in terms of spending across Southeast Asia markets. For Malaysians and Singaporeans, however, they continue to prioritize their love for food. So with evidence increase in expenditure when it comes to takeaway food and online grocery shopping. So we also observe upticks in Thailand and Indonesia when it comes to online purchase for health, personal care, fashion, and beauty products. So our hypothesis is really that people will likely come back to physical store once the pandemic eases up. But we do predict that the e-commerce and online shopping will stick around for a while, as consumers are now increasingly observing the convenience of having everything delivered to their doorsteps, and it may jolly well be the new norm moving forward.
Yeah, so the rise in e-commerce is probably going to strengthen and accelerate as a result of this, and go to more categories, because at the moment, I think people get deliveries of certain items, but now we're seeing increases across the board, and as Sam alluded to, it's quite interesting to note that it is the Philippines and Thailand that is and Indonesia that's upon fashion and beauty and health and personal care higher than the other markets. And what an example of how this acceleration is changing behaviours in Japan, Uber is about to launch Uber Eats, and it's going to be the first kind of like home food delivery kind of service, I think, in Japan. And I don't think that would have happened or would have been prioritised, or maybe even culturally it would have been accepted as easily as in the current climate. So, again, any brands in any of these categories should be active and should be spending on online video. Next slide, please.
In the next couple of slides, we are going to explore a bit about the consumers in Southeast Asia's perception towards advertising. And I'm also going to show you some case studies of ads that we have tested revolving around COVID-19, which will hopefully give you better insights. So when we ask about their interest in hearing from specific industries, consumers in Southeast Asia are turning to news as their trusted source for information around the pandemic. So since the pandemic, we really saw that consumption of news inventory is greater than it ever was before, and it's really continuing to grow at an accelerated rate each day. And while news remain one of the key priorities, Indonesians do have other plans as they're turning to entertainment brands to help distract them from all the negativity that's happening around them. Messaging from food brands, information from government and healthcare organizations also remain key topics for Southeast Asians, as they are still really very much interested in the developments of the pandemic. While on the flip side, we saw that the global travel bans and economic downturn in general, interest in travel and automobile has saw a sharp decrease in interest. But really bear in mind that we are not saying that if you're one of these industries that are severely affected by the outbreak, you should not be advertising. In fact, we are seeing quite a few powerful and emotional ads coming from brands that they can't sell their product or services during this time. And one of the examples which I'm going to show you next is from Tourism Australia, which is not really from Southeast Asia, but it's really a good video to elaborate my point.
A funny thing happened on the way home as we closed our doors and explored smaller worlds. We looked out through the window and realised we missed you, maybe more than ever on toast. Now, that may not be true, but we'll tell you what is. Staying connected to mates, it's just what we do. So, look, there's a quokka, roos running amok, furry friends high in trees and green shoots plopping up. The fish are on a break from our sun-kissed bits. Whale sharks roaming quietly, our silence, their bliss. What else is going on? Well, the winds are yet sweeter. The grass is getting greener. Uluru is having a rest. The stars are still twinkling. Sun showers are sprinkling. The fruit is getting fat. The views are repainted. The horizon much lighter. There's plenty to like. There's plenty that's brighter. So that's news for now. Stuff that makes you feel better. There's a lot more to share to bring us closer than ever. With love from Oz.
So this is really my favorite example of how a tourism brand can remain relevant despite travel restrictions. So it was a really heartfelt message along with many beautiful images of Australia that evoked strong emotional response such as happiness, warmth, and inspiration among the consumers. And there was really no pushy or salesy message there, just a promise of, like what the caption was saying, repainted views and lighter horizons for travelers to enjoy once again. And it really amplified the positive brand favorability and post-viewing intentions, such as intention to purchase or to go to Australia once this whole ban is over. So I think this ad really did very well in tapping on that desire to travel once again. And I'm sure many of you now, after seeing this video, is really dreaming of a getaway to Australia once the ban is lifted. So by staying in the minds of your consumers during this period, Tourism Australia can really just flip the switch from survival to revival once travel restrictions are lifted and get that head start while other brands are still licking their wounds and wondering what's going on.
We see it in Japan as well. I mean, Japan had the double whammy, of course, of the COVID and the economic downturn and stuff like that, but also of losing the Olympics. And we've been working with the Japanese Tourist Board for a long time on their messaging and around the Olympic messaging. Japan has a real opportunity. This is what we're talking to them about right now, to put a really positive message to the world out there, which is going to be, look, all this amazing stuff about Japan that you love, the food, the culture, the scenery, the everything that is kind of, that people love about it is still going to be here. We're waiting for you. And next year, when we can put on an Olympics, we're going to make up for this lost time and basically give you the best party in the world. And if imagine Japan being able to fill this void of negativity with such an amazing message. So there is a real opportunity for brands, as Sam said, in difficult categories to make sure they remain, as he said, flip from survival to revival as soon as this is over.
Yep. So we now want to look at messaging. So what's the best way for brands to advertise during the outbreak? So some ad veterans here may remember, off the backdrop of 9/11, brands around the world came out and addressed the crisis. And some brands did well, some made a mess of their messaging and resulted in more negativity than positive PR. So brands should really heed this lesson and learn to be a bit more sensitive around the messaging, especially during this pandemic at a global scale, which is really affecting lives of billions of people. So consistent with our finding across the globe, Southeast Asian want brands to keep communicating, keep talking, and they don't expect the brands to go quiet during this period. So most countries look to brand to provide some sort of relevant information around the COVID-19 virus situation within their capacity or expertise as a priority. For Indonesia, interestingly, in line with their need for distraction from all the negativity, they prefer brands to create funny or positive content as part of their advertising campaign. And the most popular opinion among almost a quarter of Singaporeans was for brands to show how they're supporting their stakeholders during this difficult time.
Yeah, and I think I know what I'm genuinely hoping, or what we're genuinely hoping at Unruly, is that this creates a bit of a mind shift in terms of agencies and clients building, because I think from a video standpoint, we got into quite dangerous territory where everything essentially had been dissolved down into 6 seconds. So, YouTube obviously, and Google are pushing 6 seconds quite hard, although of course they still have the skippable ads. Facebook and social is all about super short form, as we know. So what we're almost getting is just, going down this very dangerous avenue of features and benefits based 6 second, very salesy, sell, buy ads. And what we're seeing through the coronavirus, which Sam will, and we'll look here at the different emotions that people expect from brands. But storytelling in this product through this crisis is more important than it's ever been, because much like a global Olympics, this coronavirus has been an amplifier of emotions, and so we're advising all the clients that we're working with to think about storytelling and think about the stories they want to tell during this. So as Sam said, when this is over, those brands are front of mind. They're seen to be non-salesy. They're seen to be, adding value, and consumers want that right now. They want trusted brands that they know, be having conversations with them, but they don't just want them to be there trying to sell them something.
So really in line with their interest in communication for news, government and health organization, which is driving the emotion or the need of the knowledge that is coming from news, government and health organizations for Malaysians, Philippines and Singaporeans. It's really closely followed by their need for warmth coming from advertisement itself. And if you look at Indonesia and Thailand, they expect ads to inspire them and bring that bit of positivity around the whole pandemic situation. So while we see that consumers need that level of information from ads to guide them through the pandemic, storytelling ads, as to what Phil has mentioned, really evokes powerful and positive emotion, have also been found to positively impact real-world outcomes for effective brand building, such as increasing brand favorability and purchase intent. So the challenge for brand here is really to get that tone of voice right, especially during this sensitive period. And over the last few weeks, we also tested quite a lot of brand response ads to COVID-19 from across the world. And we found that positive messaging during this time resonates very strongly among consumers. So when we compare the aggregated results of ads that address the COVID-19 pandemic in Singapore against our Singapore benchmark, we saw how ads that address the pandemic with the right emotions are outperforming our Singapore benchmark, evoking higher level of happiness, warmth, and inspiration. So the pandemic is no doubt causing a lot of pain to many right now and making it a very sensitive and emotional topic to approach. So making sure your brand's creative resonate with consumers has never been more important in this current landscape.
Yeah, and so this just goes to show the opportunity. Singapore, if you look at Singapore versus the rest of Southeast Asia, Singapore and Malaysians are the market where it's hardest to create a positive emotional response with advertising. Kind of similar to Australia. I mean, it's a lot easier to do in Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. The emotional indexes are a lot higher. But the fact that we can increase those norms through this crisis, so that consumers are now more responsive to kind of positive emotional messages from brands. Again, it is a big opportunity, and with the right messaging, the right tonality, it could be taken by brands, and they can brand through this problem. Sam?
Yeah. So in this final part of the webinar, I'm going to show you two examples of COVID-19 ads that we tested in Singapore that got the right tone and messaging, and it resulted in very positive emotional response and uplift in terms of post-viewing behaviors. Yeah. One slide up, please. Thank you. So just to recap our earlier findings, that we observed the importance of knowledge sharing among Southeast Asians during the pandemic. So when we look specifically at Singapore, 52% of Singaporeans want to feel informed by ads that they see during this period. Again, this does not have to be information about daily cases or any statistics, but just information within the capacity or the expertise of the brand to help tide consumers through this difficult period. For example, the ad that I'm going to show you next is by Prudential. It focuses on tackling the spread of fake news, which is a very apparent problem in Singapore right now, as Singaporeans are looking for more information and coming to terms with the pandemic. So we're going to play the video now.
Afraid of what people will think of them because you are Chinese, and people just keep their distance from you.
Yep. So we saw how Prudential's advocated against the spread of fake news and encouraged people to share more positivity during this trying time. So it really drove strong knowledge or informed score for this ad. And this video also evoked intense positive emotions such as inspiration, warmth, and happiness that were above Singapore norm. So though the majority of the video that we tested, be it COVID or just ads that in general, we saw how brands were often challenged to make ads that were highly informative and at the same time able to evoke strong positive emotion. So knowledge often came at the expense of emotional resonance or vice versa. But this video is a really good example of how brands balance storytelling and information advocacy at the same time.
Yeah, and it was perceived as genuine. You know, the Prudential brand as a result of this. You know, look at the perception scores here: genuine, high quality. I mean, all of this stuff is gold for this advertiser, and you know they are going to come out of this crisis obviously with a much heightened perception and be perceived to be more of the community than they were before.
Yep. So next we look at warmth. So after being informed, Singapore consumers want ads to warm their hearts. And we saw that from 46% of Singaporeans who were looking for brands to provide a sense of positivity and warmth during this time of uncertainty. And we could see how ads that directly address the COVID-19 situation with the right emotional palette are outperforming Singapore's benchmark, especially when it comes to warmth.
And you can see Singapore's benchmark there. Sorry, Jeanette, if we can go on back. Singapore's benchmark for warmth, as we discussed earlier, is only 7%. So that means only 7% of Singaporean consumers feel intense warmth when watching videos from all of the thousands of videos that we tested in our database. And we've got these 4 examples here, a government example, I think Sam is about to show, an AirAsia example, so a travel sector ad, Colgate ad, and then a finance ad, so FMCG, lots of sectors covered, and all delivering hundreds of percent higher than the norm in terms of this warmth. So now is the time, if there ever was one, to start thinking about telling stories again rather than just telling people stuff in 6-second ads. Next slide, please, the video, if that's okay.
Let us be together, aspire to achieve. No matter what, no matter when, together we will stand. Let us never be afraid if we have to change our ways. Through the years we'll always stay one in every way.
Together we make a difference, one voice, one destiny. We remain undivided, our hearts in harmony. Together we make a difference, our friends, our families. We'll stand strong, we'll never quit. Together we feel the Singapore heartbeat. Together we make a difference, one voice, one destiny. We remain undivided, our hearts in harmony. Together we make a difference, our friends, our families. We'll take care of you and me. Together we feel the Singapore heartbeat. The Singapore heartbeat.
So this ad from the GovSG with the rendition of the Evergreen song Together as the background music really showcased how people from all walks of life stepping up to support the larger community. And this really warmed the heart of Singaporeans and drove very strong brand credibility for the organization. And the positive message around Singapore's resilience also inspired the audience, and it drove really positive brand perception towards Singapore government, making them come across as relevant and very genuine as well. So this is really the end of my presentation here. But in closing, I would like to reiterate a couple of takeaways. Firstly, don't stop advertising. So remember that only less than 5% of consumers in Southeast Asia want advertisers to pause their campaign. So it's really important to build up that momentum and keep your brands in the minds of your consumer, even if you're an industry that is severely impacted by the pandemic. And once things start easing up, you can immediately switch gears from survival to revival and be the first one to go off the line. And in Southeast Asia, information is key, but emotions build brands. So Southeast Asians also want brands to make them feel warm and inspired. So make sure to pre-test your content to ensure that it hits the right emotional and messaging tone to maximize the brand impact for your brand, especially during times of heightened sensitivity. Thirdly, the pandemic is accelerating a lot of trends, for example, existing media usage and expenditure trends, resulting in a fundamental shift in lifestyle and spending behaviors. So consumption of online videos, content, and expenditure towards e-commerce and online services have really seen a sharp rise during the pandemic, and is expected to stick around well after the pandemic. And last but not least, Southeast Asians are consuming news inventory now more than ever. So it's really important to ensure that your ads appear in premium, fact-check news sites to maximize your quality exposure.
And I mean, I think Sam makes some good points there. We've deliberately kind of halved the entry level of our Unruly EQ pre-testing tool, so that if there is a brand that is worried about their messaging during these times of heightened sensitivity, within 72 hours, they can get a read on that video, in terms of positive, negative emotion, brand impact, so that they, advertisers will feel or can feel confident to be able to deploy media dollars behind that spend. And, I think, all of us collectively in the industry, whether you're, a technology vendor or a media owner or an agency or, the clients that we collectively represent, it's critical that we give confidence to our brands, those brands, that they can spend, they should spend, and what kind of creative messaging is going to work, because every advertiser that we can convince to deploy that media dollar is more for the industry. So I think that's increasingly important. And as Sam said, I was chatting to Jenny at MediaCorp on Friday. She said usage across MediaCorp's portfolio in Southeast Asia is up by 320%. And Edelman just redid their trust barometer that they do for APAC, and trust in news is higher than it's ever been now. So premium news journalism is up at 80%, and social has come down to about just over 30%. So consumers are going where they can read trusted fact-check news, and this is an opportunity for advertisers again to make sure that your video ads are placed in those kind of environments. I am conscious we've got a couple of questions that we've not answered yet. So we got one from Dom Tusho. Hey Dom, saying laptop usage would probably be the increase in laptop usage would probably be people working at home. And yeah, I would probably suggest that you're right there. I think it will be driven largely by people kind of at home using their laptop for work. Lim Sui Yi asked if TV on demand refers to Netflix. So yes, this refers to any kind of TVOD service or OTT service that people watch on their connected TV on their big screen. So I think as we saw, the younger generation were more kind of mobile, but when we looked at online video, that was younger, and then when we looked at TV on demand, that was kind of more middle-aged. So that kind of fits with those stats. And another question from Lim Sui Yi was that it's interesting to see the government news being the bottom of the top 3 increases in terms of interest. Sam, any hypothesis on that? Is that down to escapism?
Well, yes, escapism, and I really don't want to go all political, but I guess it's really the confidence in their government and in terms of the type of credibility of news that is coming out. But that might be one of the reasons why they are turning to not trusting the government sources as much. But I think we do see that for Thais, they are generally still, in fact, their top sources of interest is still news as well. So it's not that they're just not interested in the whole idea at all. It's just the source of information, probably.
Right. Okay. And then we've got someone anonymous saying the ad examples are good, but the brands lend to examples such as this. Can you share a brand who's not followed your recommendations, which is not from who has followed our recommendations from a tourism, government, insurance brand, something more mainstream like FMCG? Well, we do have the Colgate example, and I think Colgate is probably a really good case study because Colgate traditionally, again, is very dependent on their creative strategy tends to be super short form videos that are all about kind of reminder ads, total smiles and people with nice white teeth and stuff like that. It is, that they obviously work for Colgate, but Colgate does have a formula and does stick to it. And it's quite interesting to see a brand like that literally switch that entire strategy and go for something that's more about storytelling. And it worked really, really, really well for them. So if anyone, again, wants to see any case studies from any particular category, just reach out to us, let us know, and we'll be able to pull some case studies out of the database. And then the final question you'll be glad to know is which channels or sites exactly do Singaporeans, Malaysians and Indonesians turn to for their online videos? So again, we can probably help with that. I mean, I don't have an exact list of sites off the top of my head, but if that is a question that people are answering in terms of which of the sites that are seeing significant increases in volume and where people are watching these videos, then that's something that we can definitely share. I think that is it from us, unless there's any more questions. But I hope you found that useful. We do have a copy of this study that we can share, and again, we've got we've got information from other markets and tons of other video case studies in our database. So if you want any more information, or you want us to repeat this presentation to your agency or your clients or anybody, then just let us know and we'd be glad to help. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you both so much. We really do appreciate it. As Phil mentioned, we will be sharing a copy of the presentation along with everything, the videos that you've seen today. Guys, thank you both so much. Have a brilliant day, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Stay safe.